All right, thank you for the introduction. Today we will talk on training, VR training, about gamification, but storytelling, and specifically about a use case we've done at Erste Bank. Just before we start, let's introduce ourselves. I will briefly start. I'm Thijs de Vries, CEO of Warp VR, and I've always worked in the field of psychology, design, and started using games and gamification in non-gaming context. When I was first, let's say, introduced into VR, when I came across VR, the combination of design, psychology, and VR was very interesting to me. So we were definitely thinking, okay, how can we use this full field in order for training and for learning? So we founded Warp VR, where we are helping clients and by now hundreds of thousands of employees on a variety of clients with VR training. And many of these employees are actually employees of Erste Bank, and therefore also Nadine here, who's helping with explaining the use case today, which we're presenting here. So Nadine, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Perfect. Thanks for being here with us. My name is Nadine. I work at Erste Bank as a learning and development specialist. And we at Erste, we are a bank located in or operating in Central and Eastern Europe. The biggest bank in Austria with about 15,000 employees. And I am working in the L&D department, and we do all kinds of VR training together with the colleagues from Warp VR. So stay tuned to learn more about that.
Cool. So I think by now we know that VR really works for training. I think there have been a variety of talks today as well about VR and training. There's been tons of research about VR and training. I think also in the last talk, briefly discussed about VR education within healthcare. And there's been some research from a couple of our clients as well, where it can clearly, where we can clearly see that there's benefits for using VR for training and learning. Such as, for instance, the speed of training, which is at least twice as fast when KLM researched this and compared this to classroom training. But also the increase in retention has been a lot higher, looking at, for instance, the Amsterdam Medical Center, where they were using VR to train CPR training. But also more engaging, at Erste Bank actually, comparing this to instructor-led training. So there's research and there's evidence. But what we also know is that it can be quite hard and complicated in order to create, these VR training scenarios. I think we've seen that today as well with lots of development costs. As developers often required, it's a multidisciplinary approach in order to create these VR trainings. Eventually, maybe you have developers, but you also have, subject matter experts. You've got instructional designers. There's, quite some disciplines involved in order to create these VR training scenarios. With that difficulty comes time as well. So it can be complex to create. It can be months, maybe it can even be years. It can be complex to create these VR trainings, and therefore also costly, obviously. So you need maybe outsource, hire employees in order to do this, and eventually can become quite costly. So what we did at Warp VR is we've created tools and a process in order to create these VR training scenarios and actually overcome these obstacles of time and resource-intensive projects. So in these tools that we created, we are helping these clients and more with the creation of their VR training scenarios. And before diving into also the Erste Bank use case and kind of how this process actually works, just wanted to show you a couple of short clips in order to give you an idea what kind of VR training scenarios we're actually talking about. So these are all videos, so let's hope that this works. Seems to be working. So, for instance, in the top left corner, this is a fire drill exercise where a fire occurs in this case, a bedroom, and you just have, an X amount of time in order to escape and, to make the right decision. But can also be different in a more soft skills related training scenario where you need to practice more conversational skills. So maybe this is a client or a prospect you need to talk to in order to get a deal done. How do you do it? How do you talk to her? What do you say? How do you respond? Or this could be a customer service training. So in this case, in a retail store, a client walks in, she has an issue, she has a complaint, you need to help her. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? What can you promise? But it can also be more on the safety side. So for instance, here you've got a safety training with a certain safety protocol that needs to be trained. Do you know the procedure? Do you know the drill? Do you know the steps in order to take to work safely for yourself and for your colleagues? So these are a couple of examples, and they're different, but what they all have in common is that there are training employees for unpredictable situations. So any of these situations, whether it's a customer service training, it's a safety training, it's a sales training, it's all unpredictable. It can be unpredictable, and you need to train, you need to practice in order to know what to do when such a situation occurs. And the practice is something that you really want to do close to real life, close to reality. So that's why we are using these 3 key ingredients with every training scenario that's being developed, which is storytelling at first. So you want to tell a story actually to that trainee. The moment that the employee puts on the headset, he or she is somebody in a certain role, in a certain environment, something happens and you need to make choices. That's a narrative-based learning scenario, and it can be very engaging to be in that narrative, and it can feel very real. But also gaming elements, gamification elements are being used, such as scoring or feedback, in order to engage that employee and make that whole training scenario feel closer to reality. And eventually, when you are closer to reality, you feel emotion probably. And emotion is a very important factor when it comes to learning, because when emotion occurs, it could be anxiety, it could be stress, could be a happy emotion, then you can connect whatever you learn to that emotion, making it close to reality and making it let's say, a practiced experience whenever such a thing occurs in reality later on. So this explains a little bit about the different use cases that we are working with at Warp VR for the different clients. Amongst those use cases are also use cases for Erste Bank, which Nadine is going to tell you a little bit more about. So I'm going to give it to her.
Thank you, Thijs. I will take you along our virtual reality journey, let's say, and how we use VR at Erste. We started back in 2018 with the first scenario, which was about bank robbery. We back then had the challenge that we had workshop settings and role plays to somehow train people, raise the awareness of retail people, like people in the branches, when it comes to tricky situations such as bank robbery. We then thought, how can we create like a learning environment where people can experience it as real and as concrete as possible, but still have the chance to make mistakes and learn out of that without any real consequences as they would happen in real life. And we then partnered up with Warp VR and made the first scenario, bank robbery, which as a player puts you into the shoes as an advisor, and you experience the bank robbery. And we tried it out, we piloted with a small group of our retail advisors. The feedback was really good, and we rolled it out to the entire crowd, which is now a fixed component of the learning offer in regards to security that we have. We then moved on and have a couple of other topics. Safe, which is located also in the branches. Further, fraud is also a topic that gets more and more phishing emails, stuff like that. We also have one around branch choreography, which is basically ensuring smooth processes in the branch. If people come in, if clients come in, are they being advised? Who's taking care of them? Where do they wait? To just really have smooth processes directly in the branch. And the last one that we just filmed 2 weeks ago is remote advisory. This was a topic that came out of COVID. We have an own department that just remotely advises clients. And for them, we filmed the latest scenario that we have in place. But the question is actually, how do we create them? How do we get to such a scenario? And basically, it starts with choosing a topic. And I put right now in brackets. We believe at Erste that we choose topics that are sensitive, where you can experience tricky stuff on your own, where a lot of emotions are involved. As you can imagine, for example, with the bank robbery case, a person coming to you with a gun, but still being in a safe space where you can try out and see how your body reacts, how you would work, or what you would do under pressure, and to learn the procedures. And if you don't get it right, to just do it over and over again. And this is what we are trying to do with this VR portfolio that we have. Once we have a topic chosen, or it comes out of business demands, let's say, we then do a couple of workshops together with colleagues from WARP. So we bring people from the business together. We as Learning and Development contribute, and the experts from WARP VR. We define learning goals. We collect real examples. We also use real documents, real phishing emails, real fraud documents that exist in the bank. And we then build the storyline. We see like what kind of customers do we want, how they are. We choose customers that, as you can imagine, not every customer is happy, peppy, smiling at you all the time as an advisor. Sometimes they are tricky customers yelling at you, customers getting angry, customers threatening you even. And this is what we also try to incorporate in this learning environment, let's say. Not everything is easy, and it depends as an advisor how you deal with it. Once we have the storyline done, we go into the direction of filming, and this is where the guys from WARP come in again and help us with filming this scenario, and we hire professional actors for that, because we believe they play the particular emotions really well of an angry customer or things like that. And after the filming, the ball is again with WARP. They do the post-production, putting the scenario in order, and then we do the testing. We have a little pilot group out of the business. We do testing, we collect feedback, we adjust here and there, and then we roll it out, which means we put it into our LMS and make it accessible for the people to learn in the company. And how can they actually play it? The way we do it is we want to give them a maximum flexibility when it comes to learning. So on the one hand, people can use VR devices. We have a lot of them that we can lend and stuff like that. We have slide-in devices, we have foldable devices. They have the chance to play it 2D on their phone. And also a new feature from WARP VR is a web player, which is basically a 360 view just on the desktop. So we have the full range covered, which on the back end is a bit tricky for us as L&D people. As you can imagine, maximum flexibility for learners is then tricky for us when it comes to device management and logistics behind. We don't have all the learners at one place. They are spread out through whole Austria, which makes it for us a bit tricky, but for the learner, 5 possibilities to choose how they want to play it. And then to make it a bit more tangible, I also brought some facts and figures and some quotes of our learners. So what we have done with VR and also with WARP so far, we have nearly 6,000 attempts when it comes to doing a scenario out of the whole portfolio that we offer. We have almost 800 people trained in 2022 and coming closer to 900 this year. And the feedback overall that we get with such an approach, which is not a classical thing, as L&D portfolio usually consists of workshops, face-to-face trainings, maybe webinars online, and this is something completely different. So they appreciate that it's really close to everyday situations. It just feels as you had a regular day in the branch as an advisor. Also, the emotions that the actors play, they point it out as really good and helps you to really emerge in this situation. And last but not least, we get a lot of feedback for the bank robbery use case that we have, that people do really feel it on their body, their heart rate goes up, they start to sweat if they play it for the first time, because it is really as you would experience it yourself. So overall, I think still at the start of the journey, a lot more to come when it comes to VR training. And the good thing is that it's also for us as bank safe in regards to data security and so on. And also we have the possibility to scale it really quickly. So thanks for that, and I will be handing over to Thijs to wrap it up.
Cool. I love reading these testimonials. I mean, eventually it's about emotion, about conveying emotion and training for that emotion. That's actually what is here. Just indeed to wrap it up, a little explanation on how these training scenarios are being created. Nadine already told something about it, but just also some visuals with it. So we are actually using a platform that we created. It's called Warp Studio, in order to create, but also to distribute, roll out these training scenarios. So in terms of the creation process, we see clearly the two phases, which is the script writing and which is the filming. In different cases with different clients, we help as more with the services for the writing and the filming, but this actually differs from client to client. But it's actually a tool set which is very easy in order to use and to create these non-linear scenarios, so one starting point, multiple endpoints. That being said, it's still tricky, it can still be difficult in order to create that high quality scenario with the right learning goal, with the right dilemmas, with the right questions, etc. So that's definitely underneath that as well. So after that, these scenarios have been created, they can be played on any device, so anytime, anywhere. Obviously, the VR headset would be the most immersive experience, so you can imagine that wearing the VR headset and you have a bank robber coming at you with a gun. There's quite some emotion involved, and you can get sweaty hands. That being said, playing even on a smartphone or a desktop can be very valuable in terms of flexibility and scalability, and also in order for a step up in order to go to a VR headset. So it's not always the case that every employee has access to the most immersive experience. So in this case, we're actually helping as well in order to get those training experiences to many of the employees. And finally, I think this is a very important and crucial aspect as well, which is data. Eventually, and specifically when you are talking about high impact scenarios, and especially when you play them for the first time, there's some primary response you're probably gonna do. Is it fight, flight, or freeze? What are you gonna choose? Because you might not be prepared for the actual situation that happens in the scenario. Although it's a simulation, still, whenever it feels very real, you could, the fight, flight, or freeze response could be triggered. So that data is actually quite valuable behavioral data, and that's what we are showing in the platform as well. So you can actually draw conclusions, maybe on specific individual employees. Can ask them the questions why they went left instead of right on an evacuation training scenario, but also on groups of employees, or maybe on procedures itself. When procedures maybe need to be changed or need to be updated based on the data from every employee that actually have been training that procedure. And finally, we are integrating this with any LMS through SCORM, LTI, or XAPI, meaning that it's very easy to integrate this within every learning management system and combine this as a blended learning approach, because I think that's eventually very valuable as a blended learning approach with workshops, maybe e-learning or classroom sessions as well. Just to wrap it up completely, we've got a customer success team that really helps every single one of our clients, also Erste Bank indeed, with everything related to the creation process, but also the implementation. And we help with professional services such as script writing and filming, and eventually also with workshops. In case you want to experience anything yourself, please go to this URL. There are a couple of demo scenarios available there. You can also download our app and play a couple of these demo scenarios, which can give a good sense of what it is and what it can do. And Well, if there are any questions, we are more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
A round of applause before that, please. Can you hear me? All right, so who wants to start? The gentleman first.
Hi, thanks for the talk. We developed something similar for a bank in South Africa, and I wanted to know what was your experience in the onboarding process for the bank in terms of people using VR technology for the first time? How was that experience? Was there a need to train them for the VR devices first? And then finally, why video and not CGI? So why like a real-world video filmed with actors and not maybe a CGI with an avatar scenario?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, I take that one. Thank you. Yes, indeed, we did have to train people. We did also see that there are lots of people that are digitally very skilled. For them, it was pretty easy to do that. We did offer some support also, and in the branches, we have dedicated people trained how to use it, because in a branch we have around, depends on how big it is, 30 to 50 people working, and there is at least one that is skilled and trained on how to use those scenarios. We do also have some stuff embedded in workshop series where someone from L&D is present to like help with all the technical questions. But indeed, it was a challenge, and it still is to somehow, train people how to use it.
Maybe I can also just compliment the fact that this is one of the best examples of collaboration between solution providers and clients. And you have in your bank L&D specialist, not everyone has that. On top of it, you also started already back to 2017, which is quite early on. Another question, I think there was 2 people here who raised their hand first.
But there was the question, why film and not CGI? Would you answer that also?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure.
It's not my question.
Also, okay, good question. So indeed, why filming and not avatar CGI 3D environments? I think there are a couple of reasons. So one of the reasons is realism and emotion. So eventually using, especially professional actors, which are very well in playing these emotions, you know, when it comes to stress or anxiety, I think that's very valuable, and it's nowadays still, and I don't know, maybe for still quite a long time, maybe, hard to convey, let's say, that emotion with avatars and CGI and 3D. That's one. The second is definitely speed and time to market, let's say. So, you know, and therefore also cost. So especially if you prepare this scenario well, you know, the whole writing and so we've got this scene export functionality, so you can, you know, easily create kind of a guide for filming day. It means that a pretty complex scenario, which you know can be, you know, large, can still be filmed in a single day. So you can be very efficient, let's say, with filming. And therefore with time and other resources.
Yes, my question is, yes, very quick. How many devices are you using, and how is it really on the operational side? Do they come to your place, and do they do a multiplayer game or training? If you can tell us about that. Thank you.
We have a couple of VR headsets that are, like, every branch has them. They have like different devices. They have VR headsets, they have the slide-ins, and also the easier one where you just put the phone in. So we equipped each and every branch in Austria with these, yeah. But it's tricky when it comes to, this is, as I said, the downside a bit for us. When it comes to something is not functioning, they send it over to us, updating things, stuff like that. So this is really tricky if you have a crowd that's spread out and you don't have them in an office building together or so. And we do also have a training center where we provide the different VR classes for people that are located in Erste campus in Vienna.
One last question, please. And then don't forget you can ask the question at the end of the session.
So a quick learning and development question for you, Nadine. VR, XR is another tool in the toolbox in that sense, right? So the type of trainings that you showed earlier that you're doing in VR, do you combine them with classroom training or video-based training, or do you substitute them with VR training?
The trainings that we have right now are embedded in a larger learning journey. As I said, bank robbery is just one part that each and every employee has to do. The other 4 that I showed you is for onboarding new retail employees. So if people come into the bank new, that are new hires, they have a whole journey of 6 months, and these are embedded in this journey. So we have a whole package of face-to-face, there is webinars in between, and then in between, when the topic fits, we have the VR scenarios. They do play it on their own. Bank robbery is also on their own, but afterwards we have a debriefing session together with the participants, as it's a really sensitive topic also, to make sure we cover any open questions or anything that triggered them maybe properly, and not leave them after playing it alone.
And we are on time. A round of applause to our speakers.